Hello and welcome to the news on HOMEF TV. I am Kome Ojomo. First, the highlights. NSAC push for a unified call for socio-ecological justice. WACMO reinforces resistance against false solutions. Ekpetiamai Kingdom institutes legal action against Shell. Now the news in detail. The Nigerian Socio-Ecological Alternative Convergence, NSAC, held its second edition to address Nigerians' deepening environmental and socio-ecological challenges, including desertification, deforestation, biodiversity loss, and pollution. The conference, which brought together over 270 participants from across Nigeria, other African countries, and international delegates, highlighted the crucial link between gender justice and environmental justice, while emphasizing the need for alternative livelihoods for women in impacted communities using practical implementation of existing policies. Our correspondent Onome Etisuru completes the report.
The Nigeria Socio-Ecological Alternatives Convergence 2025 reinforced the urgent need for community-based approaches, policy coherence, gender-responsive strategies, and regional collaboration. The event marked a significant step toward building a sustainable and just socio-ecological future for Nigeria and the broader African continent. In his opening address, the executive director of HOMEF and lead convener of the event, Nimo Bassi, identified the country's ecological crisis as a consequence of decades of unchecked mineral extraction, poor urban planning, and weak environmental governance. He called for sustained civic mobilization and collective action. The keynote address, delivered by Professor Emmanuel Oladipo, provided a thorough critique of Nigeria's environmental and climate policy frameworks, major shortcomings in policy coherence, and institutional synergy. The address noted that development without environmental responsibility only increases national vulnerability and called for a harmonized legal and regulatory framework to address current and emerging environmental challenges.
This convergence is different, one, because of the passage of time. Each year that passes without environmental action being taken means a deepening of the crisis. The crisis is getting more complicated, it's getting more serious. Example to illustrate this point can be found in the UNEP report on Ogoniland. When that report was published in 2011, some communities had pollution in their soil to a depth of 5 meters. By the time the cleanup began and places were excavated, the pollution had gone as deep as 10 meters. And so places where you have continuous environmental degradation and mindlessness and carelessness, the problem is getting more complicated every day. And I would not fail to mention an example of one that is a real horror. In May 2020, there was an oil well explosion that started a fire and spilling at the Rodo 1 well off the coast of Awoye in Ondo State. That spill has been burning for more than 5 years. And so every single moment that passes, the crisis gets more complicated. And so we're sounding the alarm. This is a time for environmental emergency across Nigeria. Across Nigeria. There's no part of this nation that's exempted because the crisis is so much. It's like raw wounds that are not being attended to. And we need this to change.
The most important aspect is to recognize the complexity of the challenges we are facing. The environment is very complex and it's made up of various components, including we human beings, that enter together to either develop or destroy the environment. What we have been doing is that we try to create a series of policy interventions in climate change, in environment, in water, and all of which, because they are not totally integrated together, are not making it very easy for the meaningful results that are expected from the implementation of these policies to surface. So government needs to now look critically at all these various policies and look at how to bring them to view, but back them up with a lot of action plans that can be monitored for implementation.
Until as human beings, and therefore as governments, we begin to see ourselves as part of nature. That we are not just that we are intrinsic to nature, not just that nature is important to us, but that we are part of nature, part of the environment. It is only when we begin to see ourselves that way that then we would understand that taking care of the environment means taking care of ourselves. Because we are part of nature, because we are part of the environment, it means that when we are then planning, we are planning in a manner that also preserves us in the environment and not in a manner that destroys the environment.
The different panel sessions stressed the need for homegrown solutions and the relevance of indigenous knowledge systems in driving environmental response strategies. The session noted that failure to address the interconnected challenges of resource exploitation, food insecurity, and conflicts enabled false solutions.
Saying caution is only scraping the surface. I don't know if experts are here of our land. It's not really digging deep. And the shallower a sea shoreline is, the more violent the wave. This is not scientific, this is our knowledge. So dredging our shoreline can also serve as a way of protecting our community. We have seen it at work. If wave is coming, it gets to a portion that is deep, it will die. It will die there. It's local knowledge. It's not, Professor, it's not scientific.
Whenever we talk about gender, we just talk about men and women. However, take it a little deeper and recognize that men and women are not a homogeneous group. Within those groups, you have people who are young, you've got people with disabilities, but you've also got to think about income. Let's agree, when you warn of flooding, if you've got people within a community with means, they're going to leave. But if you have people, this is their only home, their livelihoods are affected, I think it's so important that whatever strategies you devise is to understand how various groups of people within the genders are actually affected. I think for me, that's how we miss the point to a degree.
First thing for us to tackle climate change, we must always address the drivers of climate change. We cannot have effective policies if we don't, at every point of our policy or action, incorporate elements of polluters paying, elements of cutting down those drivers of climate change.
The Nigeria Socio-Ecological Alternatives Convergence, NSAC, calls upon the government to put people first over profit and to protect our environment and vulnerable communities who disproportionately bear the brunt of the climate crisis. The message is simple: to hold the financiers of the climate crisis responsible and to make them pay. Onome Etisioro for HOMEF TV.
Civil society leaders, grassroots activists, and environmental justice advocates convened for the West Africa Climate Justice Movement. The roundtable focused on escalating climate crisis facing the West African region. The gathering challenged dominant narratives by framing climate justice as a movement rooted in fairness, historical accountability, and grassroots resistance. The West African Climate Justice Movement was admonished to avoid reproducing exploitative fossil fuel dynamics in renewable energy transition. Our correspondent Stanley Egolo completes the report.
The session, which opened with a keynote delivered by HOMEF's Executive Director Dr. Nimo Bassi, urged a shift in language from global warming to global heating and burning to reflect the severity of the crisis. Dr. Bassi critiqued the failure of global climate agreements and condemned the so-called solutions such as carbon trading, blue economy, and other market-based mechanisms promoted by international financial institutions. He went further to present concepts like organize and yasonize, which are drawn from African and Latin American resistance movements as models for peaceful defiance against extractive industries.
Nigeria is playing along with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Whatever all the hypocrites are saying should be done, that's what the Nigerian government is happy to do. You talk about carbon trading, carbon offsetting, all the four solutions. Nigeria is happy to do that. But you know, if we really want to talk about climate justice, there's no climate justice in Nigeria. If there's climate justice in Nigeria, there will be no gas flaring. If there's climate justice in Nigeria, oil spills would stop, and there will be an audit of the entire oil belt. If there were climate justice in Nigeria, how can Ororo oil well be burning for 5 years and government is doing nothing about it? There's no climate justice in Nigeria. So we're demanding for climate justice in Nigeria, just like we're demanding for the whole West African region and the entire African continent.
What we are saying, we dialogue with governments at local level. The dialogue should be in the way that government understand what we are saying. For instance, in terms of mining, in terms of plantations, we have been clear that plantations need more land. And if the government is going for plantations projects, it means the land will be taken from communities. In some of the countries, the land belongs to communities. And we also bring the community voices to international level, because at international level, there are conventions, there are decisions that are taken to implement some of the conventions at international level. So we also bring community voices, for instance, at UNFCCC Conference of Parties spaces.
Country representatives shared vivid accounts of their national struggles, and the strategic session explored how to build a Pan-African response to these shared challenges by emphasizing the need to center indigenous knowledge, promote gender equity, and connect ecological justice to cultural identity and ancestral wisdom. A key moment in the roundtable was the launch of the report titled Deconstructing and Debunking False Solutions, RED Plus and Other Carbon Markets in Africa by the No RED in Africa Network. The report exposes how carbon offset schemes commodify nature, undermine real climate action, and dispossesses indigenous peoples of their land.
What I would like to see is to see our indigenous and community leaders and indigenous leaders to be coming together across Senegal, for example, and across Africa or West Africa, and to add their voice collectively on what we are saying. Because I think if we have that backing from our indigenous leaders in a large majority, not just one by one, it will have a lot of impacts.
When you look at the coastal areas, we are seeing instances of communities disappearing. As I heard, the kind of the documentary we saw yesterday is not different from Ghana. When you go to the southeastern region of Ghana, the Volta Lake or the Volta Estuary, there is a lot of history about communities that are disappearing or have disappeared, and there are evidences to show. There are some that you can even see it yourself, where buildings and houses are far inside the shore.
The one-day West African Climate Justice Conference has just come to an end, and some of the issues raised in their discussions are climate change as a result of forest degradation, deforestation, crude oil pollution in communities across Africa, and the carbon trading discussion. From Abuja, the nation's capital, I am Stanley Egolo for HOMEF TV.
In a press conference convened to bring national and international attention to the legal action instituted by His Royal Majesty King Bubari Dakolo, Agada IV of Ekpetiama Kingdom, and his community against Shell. The lawsuits contest the legality of Shell's proposed divestment from its onshore assets in the Niger Delta. The plaintiffs argued that the divestment is unlawful under the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 and violates the constitutional rights of the people's life, dignity, and a healthy environment. The press conference was held to build public awareness and solidarity ahead of the court's hearing.
The press conference was to formally announce and publicize the lawsuits filed by the Ekpetiama Kingdom against Shell, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, NUPRC, and the Attorney General of the Federation, and to present evidence of the ecological devastation and health impacts caused by decades of oil exploration in the region, as documented by the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, while also calling for Shell to be held accountable for environmental remediation and compensation before any form of divestment is considered. While briefing journalists, the The lead plaintiff, His Royal Majesty King Bubarai Dakolo, the Agada IV of Ekpetiama Kingdom, described the personal and communal suffering caused by pollution from the Gbarin gas plant. He referenced the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission report's findings of widespread contamination, health crisis, and loss of livelihoods. He declared that Shell would not be allowed to evade its responsibilities. Also, Dr. Nimo Bassi, the Executive Director of Health of Mother Earth Foundation, framed the Niger Delta as a sacrifice zone for fossil fuel colonialism. He asserted that justice requires polluters to pay up, clean up, and restore the environment before exiting.
This case is instituted because we cannot continue to be taken for granted. Yes, it will have been a case by the entire Niger Delta, but you know how it is, that these guys have operated there using the best brains in the world to divide and conquer. So coming all together to do this was going to be difficult. And so Ekpetiama Kingdom did not have to wait. We've taken this step. And luckily, the entire world, the world that believes in justice, is standing behind us to see that Shell does what it's supposed to do, and the federal government of Nigeria does what it's supposed to do. The cleaning that you hear sometimes that they do, they only coagulate the spilled crude and leave it inside the water. And you know water is a universal solvent. And so if you leave, even gold is dissolved by water. Not to talk of crude oil that you put inside the water, it's inside the river itself. And so it keeps poisoning everything from fish. Sometimes they die, sometimes they do not die. But when you eat it, you know you're not eating the best.
We are just enduring. When will this come to an end? We don't know. We are just suffering and smiling at the same time. The damages are many. Now that he has come out to help his people, we don't have choice than to support him. So the children, the women are all backing him up with our prayers and everything.
Ekpetiama Kingdom is one of the many areas that have become crime scenes of ecological warfare. So what is going on in the Ekpetiama Kingdom, what is happening in the Niger Delta, is actually an ongoing crime. Nothing accidental, it's intentional pollution, and it's persistent. The lawsuit under reference is not simply about a community asserting its rights, it's about resisting annihilation. At Health of Mother Earth Foundation, HOMEF, we hold that true justice must begin with recognition that the environment is not a passive backdrop. It is life itself. A just transition must therefore start with healing the wounds of exploitation, ensuring that polluters do not run away, but pay up, clean up, and restore what they have destroyed.
The press conference effectively communicated the details and stakes of the lawsuits to a broad audience, while fostering solidarity between the Ekpetiama Kingdom and various civil society organizations that are committed to environmental justice, and to further engage in advocacy with government agencies and international bodies based on the recommendations of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission's report.
First of all, we are not aware of any plan put in place to systematically decommission and abandon obsolete oil infrastructure. If you take a tour of the Ekpetiama Kingdom, you will see evidence of the relics of disused oil wells and oil pipelines. Who have they handed this over to? So on several grounds, the so-called divestment has not complied with the laws of the country, and that is why we are boldly contesting the action of Shell working in conspiracy with the agents of the federal government.
Support their legal challenges and broader struggle for recognition and restitution. Nigeria must rise above capture by vested interests. Our systems of justice and governance must serve the people, not just for a few corporate profiteers and their enablers.
Esele Ujanelu for HOMEF TV.
Thank you for that report. We'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll talk about the negative impacts of Red Plus. Stay tuned.
Many communities in the South have a different view of the future. They have a different vision of the future, of what a climate harmonious world would look like. It makes no sense to save the environment if you destroy or erase the people who are living on that environment. Then the entire goal of human livability within the planetary boundary is defeated.
Welcome back. The No Red in Africa network has refuted the false narrative surrounding the carbon trading project and carbon offsetting, stating that the African continent and Nigeria are not interested in carbon markets. The group stated that carbon markets should be designed to avoid negative impacts on local communities and ecosystem, but also noted the reverse is the case in the situation. During the Forest Carbon Dialogue tagged The Truth Behind Carbon Offsets Markets, it was stated that the socio-environmental impacts and implication of Red Plus in Africa, which is the green grabbing, green extractivism and exploration of an emissions rights, poses a serious threat to the continent and its forests. Our correspondent Esele Ujanelu completes the report.
The dialogue featured thought-provoking knowledge-sharing sessions, such as a research report presentation and lived experiences sharing from forest-dependent communities and activists. It was a highly exhilarating and impactful gathering on strategizing together to build and leverage people power. The risks in Red Plus design and implementation are a disregard for rural communities' views, while also failing to address the causes of deforestation and local communities losing their access and use of forest resources, deepening existing inequalities if elites capture the policy's benefits, as well as reducing the forest to a single commodity value by assigning a price to it. The Executive Director of Health of Mother Earth Foundation, Dr. Nimo Bassi, in his welcome address, stated that there could arise uncoincidental layers of interest among actors, both international, national, and local institutions. He explained that carbon trading is the trading of credits that permit a company or other entities to emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Forests are best managed by people because a forest is not just about the trees. Each tree in the forest is an ecosystem on its own. So when one tree is cut down, you are cutting out a whole ecosystem. It can be bad for the environment. And we do know also that these days, some governments and companies, when they look at trees in the forest, they don't see them as trees. They see them as carbon. And so they want to have carbon credits by protecting the carbon in the tree. Forgetting that no tree, a tree may live for 1,000 years, but the tree is going to die one time. And the carbon in that tree will be released. So if you protected the tree, but they are very clever. When they sign contracts to own the carbon in the tree, they only do it for about maybe 20 years. And they say renewable. Because they know that by that time, maybe at the end of the contract, they themselves can come and cut down the trees. But they would have gotten the carbon credit they wanted. And the carbon credit they're getting doesn't bring anything to the community.
One thing that I think we need to understand is that the struggles to protect our forests is part of a broader struggle for territory and for commons. It's not the struggle that is separated from the struggle for land, the struggles for water, the struggles for seed. It's one struggle to defend the dignity of our people. So I know that here we have forest people that are present today. And I think that your territory is under attack. They want your territory to accumulate capital, to accumulate money. So you have to defend your territory. And in the process of defending your territory, in the process of defending your forest, you are also defending the dignity of human being. And your struggle is not only useful in your community, is useful everywhere in the world.
No Red in Africa Network, UNRAN, is a network of African civil society organizations, movements, activists, and individuals that oppose all kinds of false solutions, especially Red, with all its suggested variants. Esele Ojanelu for HOMEF TV.
The movie Fatsani showcased a deep-seated corruption and survival and environmental issues. The film follows the trial of the young character Fatsani as she fights for her place in society that puts profits over the well-being of people and its environment. Participants who partook in the viewing held different views, with many emphasizing the need for collective action and environmental advocacy as a valuable insight into the film's impacts. Participants had renewed motivation and practical insights that would help them bring and begin to use their voices effectively to tell story of advocacy.
Participants during the discussions identified several key lessons from the film, with the most prominent being speaking up even in the face of danger, and the need to restore fundamental human values of compassion and solidarity. Many consistently reference the Povita scene where Fasani, undeterred by the presence of armed police officers, courageously voiced her grievances about environmental degradation and social injustice. They noted that the character's willingness to speak the truth to power, despite the potential for violent retaliation, served as a catalyst that mobilized others to join her cause.
No matter what you are, no matter where you are, irrespective of the challenges that you come across in life, you must be optimistic, you must be resilient, and you must learn to speak out and be strong. It's a tale that has given me another courage, as an activist, to always speak out for people and to always show love. Not just love by lip, but the love that can make you die for the people.
Fatsani was such an inspiring, eye-opening movie. I love how we explored justice, not just from the movie alone, but how we can also bring it to our society, especially as Nigerians, like how we can make that move for fighting for what we believe in, how we can combat fear and still be people who can fight for social justice causes. It was really, really inspiring. I loved the conversations afterwards, everybody giving their opinion, people crying because the movie was emotional. I just loved it, and I'm so glad that I was here.
So one thing we actually take from this movie is that no matter the space we find ourselves, we must always learn to speak up. We must always learn to make the little changes we can in our environment, in our community, because the little contribution we make, the little opportunity we seize in our communities will bring about the change we want to see in the future.
They agreed that the film served as both a reminder of ongoing struggles and a source of motivation for continued activism. Mebe Obaseki for HOMEF TV.
And that's the news on HOMEF TV. Thanks for watching. But before we go, remember to visit our website, www.homef.org, and follow us on all our social media handles using @EchoHomef. I am Kome Odomo.